Hey, welcome into Strictly Speaking. Good to have you aboard with us. Today, we're going to talk with Tom Z. I know him as Tom Z. You're going to get to know him as Tom Zawistowski, CEO and founder, along with his wife, Nanette, of TRZ Communications, which is a technology company based at Akron, Ohio. He has also started additional companies and multiple nonprofits. Today, we're going to talk about one of his most important ventures, which is the We the People convention. But in 2009, Tom was one of the founders of the Portage County TEA Party. Remember them? He became the executive director of that group in 2010. Under his leadership, the Portage County TEA Party became one of the biggest and most successful groups in Ohio, over 2,600 members at its peak. Then in 2011, he stepped up his game. He was nominated by Liberty leaders around the state of Ohio to head a group of volunteers that was challenged with the task of putting on the first ever We the People convention, technically a state convention for liberty-minded citizens. In less than 6 months, the We the People convention was held at the Columbus Convention Center in downtown Columbus over the 4th of July weekend in 2011. They held the second one in 2012. In fact, it was held every year for 10 straight years until COVID. Today, we discuss where we the people are headed now with Tom Z right here on Strictly Speaking. Tom Z, thanks for coming in, man. How are
Happy
you?
to be here with you, Bob. Thanks for inviting me.
We've had many great conversations, you and I, on the radio over the years, and we've talked about some of these very important things, but not in this format. So this is going to be an awful lot of fun. We're going to throw all kinds of fun stuff with the We the People Convention website up on the screen for everybody to see some of the work you're doing. But so post-election, how you feeling?
I'm feeling really good. It's been a long haul, 15 years. I spoke to a group of high school students at Worthington High School in Columbus about a week ago, and I came to that meeting with them and I said, why am I here? I just drove 2 hours an hour through the rain, 2 hours through the rain to speak to you guys for 2 hours, and I'm not getting paid. And I said, I'm here because I want you to know that I worked for 15 years for no pay to give you the life that I got to live, that you now have the freedom and liberty that I grew up with to be able to become the best you can be. And when you can say that to a bunch of young people, and I, again, we have children, you have kids, we're fighting for our kids, and now I'm fighting for grandkids. That's the most rewarding thing you can do. We finally, I think, have secured enough of our, of our country, of our rule of law, of our Constitution, that we now can start, as Trump says, have a golden age of America. And I sure hope so, because there's just a lot of things coming together that I think gives real strength to that statement.
I don't even have grandkids, but it's still the reason I do what I do, to be 100% honest with you, because of the ones that are to come. And even if I'm, for whatever reason, I'm not blessed with grandkids, everybody else is who are. I don't want our time on this earth and in this country to be the time when it all fell apart.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll rest easy in my grave, God willing, to be looking down and seeing the tumult that, we didn't head off at the pass. Is that why you do what you do?
I think in the Tea Party movement, which is really our roots, it's kind of been a strange situation where the Tea Party preceded Trump, and then it became the kind of the Trump movement. And I like to say the Tea Party didn't go away. We're basically the skeleton that is the body of the Trump movement, because there's so many younger people and people who weren't in the Tea Party around Trump, but they always rely on us for guidance on, well, how do we do this? What should we do? How do you organize? But in that 15-year period, that's exactly what's motivating people. This sense of it's on us. We cannot fail. There are generations, after us that are going to have to, live with what we leave them. And so, like our founding fathers, who committed everything they had, their lives and their money and their sacred honor, we kind of felt the same way. And so a lot of people I know gave everything they had, some of them including their lives, many of them their marriages, many of them their businesses. It was a real war with real casualties, but it was a war that we felt we had to fight, and we're glad we did fight it.
The Tea Party was credited with essentially, saving the conservative movement and saving the republic after, what Barack Obama started to do in 2008. Yeah. And, weaponizing the IRS against, nonprofit groups that were conservative in nature, 912 groups and so on and so forth. And And so the Tea Party exploded and really won. I think Barack Obama even called 2010 a shellacking in terms of the midterms.
Yeah.
But today we don't hear about them at all. Even when I think about you, I introduce you first as the founder of the We the People convention.
Right.
I forgot Portage County Tea Party too.
Yeah.
What happened to the Tea Parties, and are they still needed now? Now that we just saw what happened on November 5th, which was something of a, I don't know if I want to call it a revolution, but certainly just a massive victory in the ongoing ideological war for this republic. Is there still a role for Tea Parties going forward?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's morphed into something bigger and stronger. I think.
Does it have a name now? That new something? Or
no, I don't think so. I think
MAGA?
I'm one of the people that still says Tea Party. When I do my podcast, when I do things, but we're older. We're a lot older. And we kind of served our role. You're so right about the 2010. I mean, we elected 65 members of the House in just a landslide that was totally unpredicted. Just like this last election.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not going to win anything, and you just blast them. And you mentioned the IRS targeting of the Tea Party. I was the lead plaintiff in that. I spent 6 years in court with the ACLJ, Jay and Jordan Sekulow, representing us, and we won after 6 years. We won $3.2 million for the Tea Party groups around the country, and we just wouldn't give in. Now, I based on what we know now, particularly from 2020, I would bet everything I've got that in 2012, Barack Obama did not win, and they used the same techniques they used in 2020. We just didn't know it. And I can tell you real details about how I can make that statement very clearly. But, this has been going on for a long, long time.
Have you written anything on that, on the newsletter or on the website? Because you got me peaked, but I don't know if we want to get into all the nuts and bolts of it right now. That's a hell of a statement.
Yeah, but it's and I can give you a little bit around that, because obviously Mitt Romney was a horrible candidate, but Barack Obama was a horrible president. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I wrote letters and emails to people I knew who supported Barack Obama after he quote unquote won in 2008, which I think was legitimate because John McCain was horrible. Okay, but I wrote to people and said, well, I hope he's the best president ever. I think it's great that we proved we're not racist, that we could elect a black man to be president of the United States. I wish you all the best. And within a month and a half of him becoming president, he showed his true Marxist colors with cap and tax and Obamacare and all the bailout of the car companies and all those kind of things, which basically birthed the Tea Party movement. That came out of those policies. And the funny thing about the Tea Party, Bob, was that you need an issue. You need a rocket fuel to fuel your rocket. And our rocket fuel was Obamacare. People just knew that government health care was bad. It would be bad medicine. It would be bad economically. But the thing that we didn't get across well enough was it would be bad for freedom and liberty and prosperity. It was if I control your health care, I control you. If I can say, oh, your daughter's not going to get this operation, Bob, stand on your head in the corner until I tell you to stop, that's what you're going to do. So we fought Obamacare as a liberty issue. And a lot of people didn't pick up on that. They were like, oh, it's bad medicine and all that. And it certainly has proved that in COVID. But
we lost that fight. Because we still haven't overturned it. Trump said in 2016 he was going to repeal it, but nothing has been put forth that was workable.
And Paul Ryan, was exposed as the frauds that the Rhino Republicans were, because they said they were against Obamacare, but they weren't. They were for Obamacare. They were for all of Obama's policies. When you talk about Mitch McConnell and John McCain and Mitt Romney and people like that, and we were right. Obamacare was horrible. And if we didn't have Obamacare, and if we didn't have the hospitals, I mean, how many hospitals did we lose in Ohio with the consolidation? There's like 5 hospitals in all of Ohio, right? They own all those little hospitals. If you didn't have that when COVID started, you wouldn't have the command and control that they used against us to take our liberty and our lives and our health, and our money.
That's a great point.
Okay, so that's the part. It's interesting. You talk about this because did you write this down? What's the history? All of this, so much happened, Bob. It was an amazing, amazing ride. But through it all, we persevered because we just knew we were right, and we knew what we were fighting for was right. And so when Donald Trump comes down the escalator, we're kind of standing there at the bottom with open arms. And most people don't know, but it's just a fact. Donald Trump is never president of the United States without the Ohio Tea Party, flat out. If Donald Trump does not win Northeast Ohio, which no Republican had won since 1958.
That's crazy.
Okay, he's not president. We the People Convention played the lead role in that. After people forget, our Rhino governor, John Kasich, beat Donald Trump in the Ohio primary.
That's right.
Remember that?
Yep.
Okay, so he beats Donald Trump in the Ohio primary. The convention is right here where we're sitting in Cleveland, Ohio in July. He won't even go to the convention. So now it's August, and our Tea Party people, who were split, I mean, there were people in the Tea Party movement who wanted Ted Cruz, wanted Marco Rubio, wanted Ben Carson. We weren't all in for Donald Trump to start with, but as it progressed, we knew Trump was the right choice. And so we're out going door to door to try to help Trump win Ohio. We're going to the Ohio Republican Party victory centers. There's no Trump material at all. Can't get a sign. Can't get any door material. We literally videotaped them at various county headquarters, and this is 2016. All right, this is August of 2016. The election's in November, and literally the Republican Party, Ohio Republican Party county chairmen are saying, no, we're not supporting Trump. Kasich said we're not going to do that. So we sent tapes to the Trump campaign. Now, Donald Trump, most people don't know that Trump's 2016 campaign was very unusual in a whole lot of ways. Most people know it's unusual. But one of the ways was that until Trump ran, there had never been a presidential campaign that didn't have their own statewide organizations in every state. Traditionally, they would fund their own people in every state. And then the party in that state would assist them, but they ran their own campaign. Donald Trump, being the pragmatic businessman, he is like, why the hell would I build my own campaign staff when you got all these people in these offices? But he didn't know that places like Ohio were going to undermine him. And so guess what happened? Ohio became the only state in the union that Trump had his own campaign team. And he sent a guy that you and I both know, Bob Paduchik, to Ohio to put a campaign together. None of our people wanted to have anything to do with him or the Republican Party because they had seen how they were sandbagging Trump. So I, as president of the We the People Convention, had an event in Columbus where I brought Bob Paduchik on stage and said to all the Tea Party people, this is Trump's man in the state. He needs help. I want you to volunteer to help him. And his campaign staff in Ohio was at least 50% Tea Party leaders.
No kidding.
And then we went to work, and you may know this because it's something we've done for 3 years at 3 presidential elections in a row. We teamed up with the NRA. Now, I remember sitting, it's a great scene from a movie. David Conte, who's our NRA regional guy, and I are sitting in the most dilapidated Arthur Treachers on State Road in Akron, Ohio, okay, in like August 11th of 2016, just him and I, and no pun intended, 'cause he's with the NRA. I said, David, he can't win unless we do it. I said, if the NRA will give us the weapons, meaning not guns,
proverbial,
but iPads, phone capabilities, walk
infrastructure,
list,
whatever it is,
I'll recruit the Army to go fight the fight. And we sat there on that day, 2 guys, and said, we're going to elect Donald Trump. And all the way through that time, if you remember, Hillary Clinton was going to win Ohio by 16%. It's impossible. Hillary's up a week out. Hillary's up by 11% after the Billy Bush tapes and stuff. Well, the We the People Convention learned in our time you can't trust the polls. So we had built our own technology to do our own polling. We have a phone system that we can do our own polling. And so I was doing my own polling, and we had this massive amount of data that we were generating through the NRA of all the phone calls we were making. And the NRA will tell you that we surpassed a number of calls made in the history of the NRA that year. We just were so engaged. And so my survey said that Trump was going to win. And after the final debate, he had the Billy Bush tapes, and then they had the final debate, and Trump did pretty well. I polled the next day after the debate, and I came out with a poll that said Trump's going to win by 8.6%, and he won by 8.2%. And we knew that.
Man, you were off.
I know. Wasn't it terrible? In today's world, that's like a home run, right? It's a grand slam. But the bottom line was, if we had not made that effort, Donald Trump doesn't exist. And we then, think about that. You go through Obama for 8 years, and now you would have had Hillary Clinton for 8 more years. It's over, Bob. It's game, set, match.
No, I agree.
So
when you said you knew back then, and you kind of figured it out anyway, when you look at all the other people who are running, that Donald Trump was the right man for the job.
Right.
Did you mean because of policy? Did you know exactly what he would do and who he was? Or do you mean the right man for the job because he's the only one who could beat Hillary? Because you mentioned a lot of Ohioans,
right,
where I was Ted Cruz.
Right.
I was right out of the gate. He was my number one guy. I liked a lot of things about Ben Carson. I liked a lot of things about Carly Fiorina. I liked a few things about Marco. And Donald Trump was way down that list for me. Now, I've through hindsight, of course, which is always perfect vision, I've looked and said, none of those people, if they would have won the nomination, would have beaten Hillary Clinton.
They would have destroyed him.
Somehow, some way. So what did you know and when did you know it? As the saying goes, that was he the right guy just because he's the only one who has a chance of stopping her, or that he was going to go on to have this glorious, exceptional presidency?
Yeah, you didn't know that. What you did know is the guy was saying the things that we knew had to be done. He was talking about illegal immigration, coming down the escalator. He was talking about, the economy and the forgotten men and women. Remember, he made that comment. And so that was something that no Republican would say. They were still doing Washington speak. He was speaking to the common man. So that was really attractive to us. But the second part was, we knew you couldn't be part of the establishment and fix anything. His being so far outside of that and having the money to self-fund was really the key to us, because we had tried for years. Remember, this is 16. We started in 2008. We had tried for years, trying to find those Republicans that we could support, and they all just stab us in the back. And so we knew that this was the best shot we had. We didn't know if we could do it. We didn't know if he could do it. We didn't know if he could win, but we were willing to bet everything we had. We bet the farm on that, and fortunately we bet right.
So on November 5th, after we went through everything we just went through, and the race was called, and you knew it was his, did you jump for joy, or did you collapse in a heap and a sigh of relief? What was your feeling?
So really interesting that you bring that up, because we are contrasting that with 16. And at 16, you bet the field, you bet the farm, but it was a long shot bet. And so when he won, it was just joy. It was high five, screaming at 3 o'clock in the morning, waiting for Pennsylvania to get called, right? So they'd wait until no one could know it. And I mean, just joy. This is totally different. Because we've been there before, and we knew that the fight had been as hard or harder, because what was our fear? Our fear was they're going to do it 2020. They
exactly.
Steal it. That was our fear. And so when they called it, it was really more relief, and it was just satisfaction. We just felt satisfied. We did it. We did it. We did what we set out to do against, again, unbelievable odds. And so there was a tremendous amount of satisfaction. But on my podcast, I actually talked after the election, the Saturday after the election, I really talked to our people about having almost like a post-traumatic stress syndrome, that a lot of our people were having trouble being happy because they had been so traumatized for the last 4 years, when we've got our own friends still in prison for January 6th, and that on our conscience, and just struggling with the pain of that. We just had to relax enough, and I had to give them permission. Be happy, smoke a cigar, have a drink, take your wife to dinner, get together and just do a toast. Celebrate this. But actually I had to tell them to go out of their way to do it, because they just had really been through a lot of trauma for a long time.
That's what I did. There was a sense of satisfaction, but there was also a sense of almost euphoria in Schadenfreude, because
Yes,
I mean,
good
because
word.
of what they had done and everything they had done to describe not only the candidate but all of his supporters, as garbage, and all going back to deplorables and racists and phobes this and ists that and everything else. It's like in a massive show of defiance, I guess, of that mainstream media, that orthodoxy that said if you're right of center, you're evil. It just rose up and said, no, we're not, and we're taking this country back. And yeah, you can say the immigration, inflation, and crime are the big issues, but it's more than that. It's culture that we were rebelling, this shift in culture to almost radical leftism, radical Marxism, and the trans movement and everything that's going on. It's like we just kind of stood up and put up a big roadblock and said, we're done. We're done with that.
Yes.
And when I saw the people who tried to get themselves rallied around an absolutely abject moron of a candidate and trying to tell us that this person could lead the country, could manage a multi-trillion-dollar budget and a 36 $trillion debt and everything that goes along with it, and foreign relations, that this person who couldn't string a coherent sentence, back to back 2 sentences, I was just like, I was so excited. Yeah, there was a sigh of relief, but I was like, I guess it's because, and I compare this to sports all the time. If you're ever watching a Browns game or whatever, and it's a must-win game, and it's going to crush you if you lose, you kind of just expect defeat.
Yeah.
And then when you win, you just explode. Yes. You just, because it's easier to take if you are anticipating a loss and a loss happens. I knew they wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
It's just rather than the crushing low. So that's what I was like, man, they're going to steal it from them again. Man, I don't know what they're going to do in Pennsylvania. I don't know what they're going to do in Arizona. I don't know what to do in Georgia. I don't know where they're going to cheat this time around, but they're going to do it. I set myself up for that. And then when it became obvious what was happening here, it was just an explosion, and there was a sense of in your face.
Yeah.
In your face, we did it. And after that, Tom, of course, comes the real work. The real work wasn't winning the damn thing.
Yes.
The real work is right now in making sure that the promises are kept. And what did you call it? What did he call it? Golden age, a new golden age or something.
Sure.
We have to deliver that in 4 years, or else 4 years from now, we might be right back in the same boat.
Yeah. Well, so a couple things. You're absolutely right about the cultural win. I've said on my podcast, this isn't just an election. This isn't just political. It wasn't just economic. This is cultural, and you can tell because you're seeing the culture change before your eyes. You're seeing NFL football players doing the Trump dance, not kneeling, right? Okay, it's crazy, and that's because of the relief and all that. The second thing I think everyone needs to really focus on is that God has a reason, right? It's God's plan. And, we were crushed when they stole the election from Donald Trump, but there's a purpose in that. You're right on the money. The biggest thing that has happened was not Trump getting elected. It was the death of propaganda. It was the death of the lying culture. It was the victory of truth over lies. But that started years and years ago. And when Trump started doing fake news, most people forget the left started that. The left used the term fake news first. Trump took it from them and beat him over the head with it. But if he didn't start that all the way back then, and then we, through our own knowledge and experience of getting involved with it, kind of say, yeah, this shit is fake, okay? You don't have what just happened. Because what's really important is that we're going forward now with a realization that they have been lying to us since we were born. You and I, our whole lives, they never told us the truth about damn near anything. And now we've got people who are truth tellers. We got people like RFK Jr., and we got people like J.D. Vance and Vivek and Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Tulsi Gabbard and all these people who are disruptors, who are saying, no, we're going to really tell you the truth. We're going to really give you the story, good, bad, and ugly. And we're going to start to dig through all this because, as we just saw with Joe Biden's, unbelievably insane pardon, okay, somewhere he said he wouldn't do it. The lies, we couldn't even get a fair jobs report out of this government, right? I mean, it's to the point where it was so bad that it was like 50% wrong. Who would you pay to be your financial analyst if they're 50% wrong every time? That's how bad it is. And that is the real gift, because you can't fix it till you realize how bad it is. And now we're going to find out way more how bad it is, because as Russ Vought and Vivek, when he did the interview with Tucker Carlson, he said most of the stuff is make work.
Yeah.
It's make
1,000%.
work that we don't need. It's just like what he did with Twitter. You know, people are like, oh, he fired 80% of the people at Twitter and it's better. And you kind of go, well, that's a high tech thing. No. Our government's probably worse. You could probably fire 90% of the people.
Well, most of the fake jobs reports you were talking about, the jobs that they did add, were government jobs. It was exactly that, hiring people to do nothing, make work, as you say, just to be able to say, look at all of the growth. Look at all of the growth. They didn't. They did nothing. How's it going to work, by the way? You started mentioning RFK and Tulsi and Elon, and you got a bunch of people who are former Democrats.
Yeah.
I wonder how it's going to work when it's time to work. It's one thing to say, yeah, we're rejecting the nonsense of Kamala and Joe and everything else, and we're going to get behind Trump here. I remember RFK wanted to run for president. If they'd have let him, he'd have been a Democrat, and he'd have been a Democrat nominee, and he would have been opposing Trump every step of the way.
Absolutely.
It's in his blood who he is and what he is.
Exactly
But
right.
because he couldn't and they wouldn't let him, he joins on board here. And so the same thing with Tulsi Gabbard. You know, was she really red-pilled, as they like to say, or what is her? My point is, or my question is, really, it's not a point. When it's time to actually start enacting policy and putting plans into place, will there true? And I'm not suggesting they're being fake. I'm not.
No,
I just
I don't think they are.
What I mean is,
but they are who they are.
Whatever they are in their core
Yeah.
that made them left-wing Democrats.
Yeah.
Will that start to emerge? Will it rise up in them again because it's their instincts? Or will they suppress all of that and say, no, I said I'm America first. I said I'm MAGA. I said I'm pro-Trump. We're going to do what Trump promised to do here. At what point will there be clashes between true MAGA and the newly discovered?
The newly converted. Yeah, I think there's two really important layers to that. Those of us in the conservative movement, the MAGA movement, just don't want to accept the fact that Donald Trump's a moderate. Donald Trump is nowhere near as conservative view as I. Nowhere near. He's a New York Democrat. That's what the hell he really is. Has always been.
It's one of the reasons why, by the way, going back to the 2016 primaries, and I said I was Cruz. I said, how could you be for Trump? Because if he becomes the nominee, it's one New York liberal against another New York liberal.
That's right.
Hillary and Donald, they were the same.
Right.
They were best friends. I mean, in all honesty.
And so the difference is that Trump was very much committed to what he believed to be true, like economically and socially, and just he had very strong values. I don't know if you've read his biography, but his pastor was Norman Vincent Peale, and he had a really strong basis in religion and in our country, and he loves our country. Who would go through what the hell he's gone through if you didn't love the country? Seriously, no rich person I've ever met would. So, but the problem is, like you're saying, everyone in the leadership of our Tea Party movement nationally, from Jenny Beth Martin at Tea Party Patriots, or Catherine Herridge at, or even Catherine Engelbrecht at True the Vote. Okay, we all said, if Trump gets elected this time, he's going to track left. That's just going to be his natural instincts. He's going to pardon all these drug convictions or something. He's going to have somebody in his office saying, oh, you got to do this, and he'll do it because he's not ideological. So the question you ask is really fundamental. Is he going to be, are the people around him, like Stephen Miller, for instance, who I think is really important in this whole thing?
Agreed.
Stephen Miller is brilliant and tough. Will they put the hammer down on Tulsi or on RFK Jr. or any of these other people when before Trump kind of let these people just run roughshod him? There were all these rhinos that were just ignoring what he was saying, and he didn't do it. I think
every one of them wrote a book after they got fired about how awful and evil he was.
I think what you're going to see this time is a much quicker trigger figure. It's going to be this is what your job is. This is what you're supposed to do. If you deviate from that, you better be able to sell me on this or you're gone. I really think you'll see a much tougher, discipline in the Trump administration, which is much needed.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to get into a number of different things too with you, Tom. Not just about the Trump administration and everything else, but about where we're headed. But you mentioned the pardon a moment ago.
Yeah.
And at the time of this running, it's probably a couple of weeks. So a couple of weeks ago, we'll say it, that Hunter Biden was pardoned, despite Joe Biden for the better part of a year saying no. I'm going to let the justice system work. I trust it. I'll trust the jury verdict and everything else. And then he went and did this. Does that grease the wheels for a pardon for those J6ers you mentioned a few moments ago?
Yeah.
And maybe one has nothing to do with the other. Maybe Trump was already planning on something. Mm-hmm. Maybe not. I don't know. But some will say that because Joe Biden did this for his son, who was convicted of some, pretty significant things by not a political appointee for the right, but by the DOJ that was selected by Joe Biden, for crying out loud.
Yeah, he was convicted on the least charges they could manage to convict him of, because his real crimes never even saw the light of day.
Which is why that 10-year blanket pardon is such a big 11-year blanket pardon from January 1st of 2014 to December 1st of 2024. So it's so enormous for all crimes committed, known and unknown, which is really, really bizarre here. If you're willing to do something like that to cover not only for your son and whatever else he did, but everything that you participated in, is it an easier sell to the American people for Donald Trump to come in on day 1 or 2 and say, I'm signing a pardon for all of those who have been charged with misdemeanors in the J6 case, and for those that were charged with anything more serious, their sentences are being commuted because this persecution of people just because they supported me has to end.
Yeah.
Will he do that?
Yeah. So a couple of things here that are really important to unpack. First of all, the Biden pardon was basically an admission of guilt. There's no reason. So anybody who wants to say, oh, Joe Biden didn't do anything, there's your proof. Okay. Number 2, I hope we take it to court. I think this idea of pardoning you for crimes that you didn't get convicted of is not. I don't think that's legal. I don't think that's constitutional. So I hope we do challenge it. Don't give them an inch. Fight like hell, because I don't think that's constitutional. But number 3, most people do feel like, and particularly on the left, they're just apoplectic because, you just gave Donald Trump the ability to pardon everybody. Okay, I don't think that was necessary. I think Trump made it clear during the campaign that he was going to pardon the J6 political prisoners. There was some discussion about whether that would be a blanket clemency or whether it would be, case by case or whatever. But it's really clear he was going to do that. But now you bring in a whole bunch of other things. I mean, what about Steve Bannon? What about Peter Navarro? What about Papadopoulos? What about these other people that are out there? There's a whole lot more to this. And they're being pardoned for things they were convicted of. Okay. Now, I think that's appropriate. I think we need a reset. These were things, I think on your show, I even said that I think what has been done to the January 6th political prisoners is the worst government crime in U.S. history since the internment of the Japanese Americans in World War II. Wow. I really believe that. 1,541 American citizens. I was there. I talked to you on the phone that day from there. I was at January 6th, and we weren't there to overthrow the country or the government.
How'd you avoid a charge?
How'd I avoid a charge? Well, there were, they like to say, there were only thousands of people. I estimate crowds for a living. When I worked in sports, I did that. There were at least 800,000 people there on the Capitol. I saw them. I could tell, they were there. And so 1,500 and some is a pretty small number, okay, which tells you how little most people had to do with this, right? But the bottom line is we were there to ask our elected representatives to do their duty. Their duty was to certify the election. And what a coincidence, Bob, that the whole we got to stop and evacuate the Senate happened right before Ted Cruz and those guys were going to start to give their evidence to why they had to go into this recess and look at Arizona and look at different states. Funny how that worked. Amazing timing. So one of the things that we're really looking for from Kash Patel, if he's the FBI director, Pam Bondi, DOJ, is we think they have to investigate the January 6th investigation commission. They need to go after Liz Cheney and these people. And we need, for the sake of history, Bob.
Is there precedent for that?
You know, there may have been, like with Watergate, or, you know, some of the things in the past. There could have been, you know, maybe something to do with the Nicaraguans with Reagan or something like that. You know, there's been
investigating an investigation
because it was an illegitimate committee. I mean, that was very clear. It violated all the rules.
Simply by the makeup of it,
Exactly
because
right.
the Republicans were allowed to appoint their own members to it, and when their first two were denied by Nancy Pelosi, they just said, "The hell with it, then go do what you're going to do."
And they committed crimes. They destroyed evidence.
Yeah.
They lied. Okay, they need to be charged. The fight for us in the liberty movement was about restoring equal justice under the law. The thing that makes America, we forget this. There's two things that were just unbelievable when our country was founded. The first one was that we were going to be ruled by law, not by men. Nowhere else on the planet were you ruled by law. The king or the monarch or whatever said, "You're guilty, off with your head." The whole thing that made us different was that all men would be equal, because you would be judged by laws that are fair and they would be equally applied. We've lost that. That's fundamental to us, and so that needs to be restored. And so that's why the FBI and the DOJ going after these judges who, you know, railroaded, you know, Trump and these other people, the prosecutors, the DOJ officials, the FBI agents. You have to go after them, not out of revenge, because that's the law. They committed crimes. You must establish, you know, equal justice under the law. The second thing that makes us different is property rights. Go around the world. You can't own property. You don't own a house. You don't own land. This is the only place in the world where you can own property. Well, what have they been doing? Taking our property, right? They've been taking our money, you can't build here, your house, needs to get my permission to build it, all that stuff. So when we say the Tea Party was really based on these foundational values, that's what drove this fight. And that's what's so exciting about our future, because if we can be successful, Bob, if we can be successful, it clearly will be monumental if we can reduce the size of government, as in manpower and different agencies and their involvement in our lives. Go back to the beginning, the founding, where the federal government was small. And with the new technology of AI coming along, we're headed to a world that's just going to be unbelievable. And that world will be more beneficial and profitable for the average person if government isn't there jamming its gears and stopping it from happening. And if you watch the Joe Rogan interview with Mark Andreessen, that's out on YouTube and stuff like that, you want to get terrified. He talks about the meetings that he personally, Mark Andreessen, who's a venture capitalist, founded Mosaic, the browser originally, he's a billionaire. He talks about the meetings they had with the Biden administration. It's full out commie. I mean, total, he says.
Censorship.
Flat out. He says, first of all, most of us don't know that the Biden administration has been debanking people. If you're in the wrong business, your bank gets a call from the government that says, hey, Bob Frantz is a risk. You can't do business with him. And you get a letter from your bank saying, hey, Bob, you don't have a bank account. That's happening in Silicon Valley, particularly with people who are involved with like Bitcoin and things like that. Number two, the social media censorship. We've lived through that and we're fighting it, and thanks to Elon.
Still are.
But we still are fighting. I certainly am.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm free on social media.
Not even close.
So that censorship is there. And then the Biden administration just said flat out to the Silicon Valley people, well, here's the deal. We're going to allow 3 companies to have AI and we will control all of it, and you won't. They already said that. And Mark Andreessen says, so basically we're in the communist China social scoring environment.
Yeah.
Right? We're now totally slaves.
Who were the 3 companies?
Oh, they didn't say. They didn't tell them exactly, but I'm sure it would have been, Meta,
Google.
Google. And I'm sure it wouldn't be Tesla.
No, it wouldn't.
It ain't going to be Tesla, so it'd be somebody else. Okay.
What do you think of AI overall? Because I'm equal. It's funny. We, in fact, I'm gonna I'm going to send you something, Dylan, real quick, that was made for me by somebody doing AI, a friend. In fact, my radio producer, Seth. And it just cracked me up here. So let me download it and forward. I want you to. Well, I don't want to do it that way. I want to get it up on the screen here. So this is on the fly, because this is the reason I'm asking about AI. Okay, I just texted that to you, Dylan. Throw it up on the screen as soon as you can. Let me know when it's ready, and I want to talk about the dangers of AI, because there was something else that happened, and I said to my friend, I said, AI, man, it's terrifying because it looks so good, it's so unbelievable.
Yeah.
And Seth said, I love AI and I hate AI.
Yeah.
And it's true, because it is incredible the things you can do with it, and the practical applications for it are really, really astounding and very, very positive. But it is so very dangerous, because I don't need to see my face superimposed on somebody else's body doing something that is, and they can do that. In fact, they are doing that with these deep fakes to young girls are being victimized like crazy.
It's horrible.
And I just wonder, what can a government do with all of that tech at their disposal? I mean, they could create Donald Trump in a cloakroom someplace doing something graphic and
like
obscene, or or stabbing somebody, and you're wondering, oh my God, what's real and what isn't real? And there's ways to tell now, because it's still in its infancy, kind of. But the reality is, Tom, as fast as this is moving, growing and developing, what are they going to be able to do next? And we won't be able to separate reality from fantasy.
Yeah. So Andreessen talks about that in that video, and he basically, and this is another technology that most people aren't familiar with, but you should get familiar with, and that's blockchain. Okay, blockchain is, I think we should be using blockchain for elections. I think blockchain certainly should be used for banking. Okay, and this is basically a technology that's encrypted, that basically only you and I, like if I send you $1,000, there's no bank involved, there's no anything, but you know it came from me and I know you got it, okay? And so what he was talking about is that in AI, they're going to start to use blockchain technology to show you whether it's real or not. Okay, in other words, that video will have a blockchain signature that belongs to Donald Trump, and you'll know that it's really from Donald Trump because of that.
That's good to know.
They're working on technologies like that, okay? But you're right to be afraid. It is terrifying.
Oh, he's got it up there. Yeah, just go. You got it, Dylan. This is what AI can do.
This message is for Bob Frantz. I listen to Strictly Speaking every day. It's the best show ever. It's fantastic. It's huge. Love you, Bob.
There you are.
And he sent that to me, and he just did that on a whim. And you can obviously tell the lips are being,
but it'll get better. It'll get better.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
A year from now, you know how much better that'll be?
Yes.
A year after that, oh my gosh, it'll be seamless and smooth, and it will look exactly like what he's saying.
Yes.
And so that's what I'm terrified of, Tom, because again, I won't know what my elected officials have really said. I won't know what my police department has said. I don't know what people will have said, and how can any. I don't know. I just don't understand how we can have order if there is chaos in terms of what is real and what is not.
Absolutely. So that's why you can't back away from AI. You've got to engage with it. And I'm doing that on a daily basis. And I'm trying to understand it and ways that we can use it. I'll make an announcement on your show that I haven't made before. But in looking at what do I want to do next, I've actually filed a patent and a trademark application for a thing called political AI, so that I could start to use AI to help restore representative government. Because as you and I just went through an experience in the last election, we had $260 million of TV ads run in Ohio, most of which were total lies. And how can you defend yourself against that?
Well, you can't.
Well, political AI will give you the tools to do that. Okay, and so
well, in what way?
On this, and for instance,
maybe you can't say everything.
I won't get into it completely, but I'll give you some examples. I mean, don't you love when they drop a 4,000-page omnibus bill and say, "Here it is. You got to vote on it tomorrow morning."
Yeah.
And they go, "There's not time to read it." You can put a 4,000-page omnibus bill through an AI, and in 20 seconds, it will give you an outline of what's good, what's bad, what's ugly. Okay, you can help analyze things. In Ohio, what's frustrated me in the Tea Party movement is that you could never figure out how your House member or Senate member voted if your life depended on it, because it's not transparent. It's the
You're
votes
right.
are there, okay, but they'll hand you a paper saying, I voted for this and I voted for that, but you don't know what else they voted for that you didn't like. I already had a guy doing a study where we could take all the votes ever made in the history of Ohio off the Ohio House and Senate website, do an analysis, and put it on our OhioCitizensPact.org website, where you could look up every person who ever ran and is running for election and see what their vote was for their whole career.
But what would be more beneficial, I think, is not just knowing how everybody voted, but what did they vote on? Because of the size of some of the bills and the complete things that are not related to one another, that are just throw-ons, amendments that are added
bills, right?
Well, but even smaller ones than that, but just things that, where they throw something on at the tail end in order to get it through. And so what did that person vote for? Did they vote for the core of the bill, and then they had to suck up the amendment that was added to it? Or did they oppose that, but that's the amendment I want, so I'll go ahead and vote for it, even though I disagree with the main part? That's the real issue here.
Yes.
Second thing to me is, I don't know what AI is in terms of, you want it to analyze, you want to use it to analyze all of these votes and everything else that you're talking about, but who teaches it what to look for and what the keywords are, so that you can spit out, like you said, in 20 seconds, a summary of what a 4,000-page omnibus bill is? Because how you program your AI may be very, very different from how the other guy does his AI. Example being Google and that Gemini nonsense.
Yes.
With show me a picture of a Nazi soldier in 1939, and it shows a black soldier,
Right, exactly,
and then a
right.
Chinese one, and then show me a picture of George Washington, and he's
Right.
black, and all these other things.
Right.
You can make AI do what you want it to
That's
do.
right.
So that's another reason why I'm terrified of it.
Okay, so let me give you an example. So I was at a dinner at the Ashbrook Center at Ashland College, very conservative center that's been in business for half a century, okay? And I asked the professor who was sitting at my table, I said, what are you guys doing with AI? And he said, well, we're making sure our kids aren't cheating on their tests by using AI. I said, no. I said, every single person who's ever graduated from the Ashbrook Center has to write a senior research paper on a constitutional topic. Are you going to create an Ashbrook AI that takes every one of those papers and learns in a large language manual, and give every graduate of Ashland University an app on their phone, so that when they're serving in state government, local government, as an aide to a senator or whatever, and something comes up, they could use their Ashland app AI to get some guidance about what the founders would have said about that.
What did he say?
He said, wow.
Did you patent that one yet?
I didn't patent it.
Come on!
I gave it to him. And said,
that's a freebie.
Wake up, okay?
Yeah.
Wake up. So if it's going to be for good or evil, then it's important for good to win. And so in the case of political AI, what I want to do is, I don't want to, put all kinds of garbage. I don't want, and this is really, I think, going back to the beginning of this conversation. The one thing that is really amazing to me that people never talk about is that for the 15 years I've been in the Tea Party, I don't know of anything we've ever asked for ourselves. When we do all this election stuff to try to make sure elections are fair, unlike the left, True the Vote isn't trying to figure out how we cheat. True the Vote isn't figuring out how we get our ballots counted, but they don't. We've done it to be fair. We want it to be fair. So when I'm talking about political AI, I'm not trying to say, and this is one of our problems, because, right, what do we rely on? Well, we rely on the NRA score for their voting record, or the John Birch Society, okay, or Heritage, their congressional scorecard.
You're right. That's
but
what we do.
They're biased.
Right.
Therefore, their issue. We're not. The other thing that was so hard to deal with when we first started the Tea Party movement is, if you look at nonprofits, they're all single issue. The life people are for life. The abortion people are for abortion. The gun people are for guns. The Tea Party was strange because we were for everything that was conservative. It's much harder. It's geometrically more complex because we have to fight every fight, right? We're helping the NRA. We're helping the pro-life people. We're helping the people who want balanced budgets. It's exhausting because every fight is a fight for liberty and freedom. And so that's why there aren't groups that aren't single issue. And we had to learn that the hard way. And so part of the discipline that we had to develop, and I learned the hard way, is that we had to pick our fights. And I came up with this guiding principle that basically said, we're only going to fight fights that we're highly likely to win and are worth winning if we do. And that allowed me to pass on a lot of things. A lot of people in the Tea Party movement and in the Trump movement still haven't learned that lesson. They want to fight every fight because they know they're right and it's worth fighting for. But it's not, because it exhausts your resources and you have nothing to show for it. And so one of the reasons I've been a successful leader, not just in Ohio, but nationally, because we've won. Because I've elected the President of the United States twice. I've elected senators like Bernie Moreno. We got rid of John Boehner. Okay, we've done some amazing things, but that comes down to picking the right fight. And so that's, no matter what happens, you've got to have that guiding principle.
Is that instinctual? How do you know? Because you have a lot of people giving you filling your ears with a lot of things about what the right fight is.
Yeah.
Is it instinctive to know, where you can identify and make that call?
I think it's more hard work. I'll jump to an example. One of the things that's influenced
a lot of people work hard though, but they can't get it right.
Well,
that's what I'm wondering how you do it.
Because they're not being honest with themselves. They're not willing to accept the facts on the field. So let's go an example. A few weeks back, right? There was a group that said, we don't want Matt Huffman to be the Speaker of the House. And so we're going to put this third-party candidate up, and we're going to do all these emails and posts and all that stuff. And they called me and said, and the vote is like on Wednesday. They contacted me on Sunday night. And they say, oh yeah, we're gonna put this guy up who I'd never heard of, which is a bad sign, because if I haven't heard of them, they aren't anybody, okay? And we're gonna do this fight. And I said, no, you're not. That's stupid. You can't win that fight, okay? And because of the practical realities of it, right? So, what did I do? I called Matt Huffman up. I said, Matt, what's the vote count? He goes, I've got 51 votes. I said, well, what if that this third party comes in over that? What'll happen? He goes, well, I'll still win, but then the Democrats might have a chance to take over if we split our vote. But I think the people he said, I don't even think that's the guy who's been the speaker, who's the Democrats' what's his name? Stevens. I said, I think he might drop out. And I knew right then. I said, okay, and he did. He dropped out. They didn't even have a challenger. You got to be willing to be open to the reality of the situation, okay? A lot of people don't like Matt Huffman, but I've learned that I've got to still work with people that I don't like. That's part of the deal, right? All the time.
100%.
There's people in the Tea Party movement drive me insane.
It's hard to do though.
It
now.
is.
More harder than I think ever before.
Well,
you've been doing politics for a very, very long
Yeah.
time, but not much longer than I have. And that's not an age crack. And so my career was different for a number of years. But it's a lot harder now, it feels like, than before, because everybody's feelings are raw, even on the same side, even in the same party. And a lot of that was born of what we saw, in the quote unquote rhino movement that really came to a head during Trump. How many of the Republicans backstabbed him, and how many of them are still doing it right now? So you don't know who your allies are, and yet you feel like they still have to keep them as, I have to keep them as an ally, even if I know they're going to do things that really piss me off.
Oh yeah,
and that I think are counterproductive to the agenda, which ought to be constitutional, small government conservatism, and just letting the people, live their lives, and the government provides the bare necessities that are required of them, the infrastructure, and leave people alone. But you're right. You've got to. There are people you have to partner with that you don't like, and it's harder to do that now than before because you don't know the enemy from the ally.
And it took me a long time. I'll tell you, what a gift it was to me to find myself in the Tea Party movement. It really was. I mean, up until that point, I was a CEO of my own company. I was a head coach in sports. I could dictate. We're doing this, we're doing that. I coached women's basketball. I coached tennis. I was at Edinburgh. We were familiar with Edinburgh. I was assistant coach for the women's basketball team, which was a nationally ranked Division I basketball team. I coached at Gannon University. I was a women's basketball coach at John Carroll. Okay, and so
I just wanted to see if you were like Tim Walz.
No, my record wasn't that great, but at least I did coach. And so, I got into the Tea Party movement And it was at first a shock, because the Tea Party movement really was the last remaining open marketplace of ideas. We argued about everything, and they were smart people, and they would argue about everything. And I mean, if I said today was Tuesday, they'd say, what calendar are you using, right? It was just insane. But it made me have to be very precise in my words, very careful about my thought process, and to be able to change my opinion when someone brought something to me that they could make the case. And so that prepared me. And then after that, I just had to get my emotions in check. I had to stop getting so hurt because I trusted and believed in someone and it didn't work out. I had to just keep my emotions in check. Now, my wife will tell you, I'm pretty emotional, and there's a lot of yelling and screaming and phone calls that I'm on and all that. I'm an emotional guy, but I was able to do that, and that's enabled me to, I think, have more success because people recognized they could work with me, even if they didn't like me. Okay?
So I want to pivot back to something you said in the early going of this conversation. You mentioned Obamacare, and I mentioned we lost that war because it's still there.
Yes.
What's the future of healthcare in this country? Does Trump have a plan, and is it workable? Is it passable?
Yeah. I don't think Trump has a plan.
I don't either.
I think RFK Jr. has a plan. I think the people, Jay Bhattacharya has a plan.
Well, I think they have plans for health,
yes,
but not necessarily health care, as in insurance.
I think.
I mean, unless they're talking about it, I'm not aware of it. I mean, all of RFK stuff is about vaccines and about processed foods and about fluoridated water and blah blah blah. And Jay Bhattacharya about forced vaccinations and all this other thing, putting big pharma in check, putting the FDA in check, and all of these kind of things. But I mean, in terms of paying for it, what's the
okay? So. You said earlier, and I think you're right on the money, and I want everyone listening to this and watching this to realize this is really about culture. What you are about to see is the biggest change in culture since the Industrial Revolution. The answer to healthcare, to education, to the military, to government, to all of our institutions is going to be this AI, is going to be efficiency. Healthcare is going to change dramatically because the costs are going to plummet when you don't have to pay for all these expenses that are unnecessary because AI.
So we're going to look it all up.
That.
We're going to get diagnosed by AI.
You bet. You're going to get diagnosed on your watch. I just saw a thing on YouTube yesterday about a toilet that analyzes your when you go to the bathroom whether you're sick or there's something going on. Okay? The future is so bright, you got to wear shades. I don't know if that's Huey Lewis in the news or someone did that.
Wouldn't the healthcare industry kill that?
They can't. They just can't.
It's just like the whole argument about cancer. There's a cure for cancer, but it costs, or it's way too profitable to keep treating people with chemo and everything else. Let them die.
Right. But I think the momentum is moving in a way they can't stop. Same with education. Education is dead. Brick and mortar schools, that's over. Because AI is going to be able to decide whether you are a visual learner, an auditory learner, you like to read and stuff, and then it will take your entire curriculum from being in kindergarten to college and put it in that format so you can learn better and faster. Okay, Jordan Peterson just launched an online university that's going gangbusters, where he's got the best people in the world teaching these subjects, and you can go there for a couple $1,000s a year. I mean, when you look at what Trump's talking about as far as taking away their endowments at these universities and things, like Harvard and Yale and all that stuff, I'm telling you, Bob, that's going to happen because they're totally inefficient. And we are going to start to pivot to something where it's going to be really, really efficient. And let me throw one more thing on you that's going to change. It's going to be really dramatic. What's going to change is families. It changes families. Think about this, because it's real clear AI is going to take a lot of jobs. And it's real clear they're talking about something like a universal income for each person, okay, which is scary to me because, again, you've got to work to have dignity. You got to work. You got to have a purpose to get up in the morning. So this idea is I'm just going to pay to sit on your ass, play video games, I don't like. But what I think is going to happen, Bob, I think we're going to start having kids again. I think with AI, you're going to be able to have one of you stay home and raise the kids. I think you're going to be able to do homeschooling that isn't a huge burden. I think there's revolutions coming in all those aspects that are going to give us a life you can't even dream of today.
I'm still skeptical as hell because who's programming it? You know, everything you just said, I mean, it sounds fantastic. You know, when you say it can tell whether you're a visual learner, audio learner, whatever the case might be, and it'll tailor it to you. Who's it? Who programs it to find that out? How do I find out? Are they just monitoring my activities online to determine what kind of a user I am, what kind of a person I am, or do I have to take some sort of a test in order for it to figure it out? And then who's programming it to tell it what kinds of lessons to to put together and to prepare for you and to present to you. Because, I mean, what's the difference if a radical leftist teacher in the Radical Leftist Teachers Union is telling a little boy that he can be a little girl, or somebody programming AI to say that, you know, if you've got questions, do you like the color blue or do you like the color pink? Okay, well, I can AI can determine from that, you know, what you're supposed to be and steer people that way. So I'm terrified of the lack of guardrails, I guess, from AI.
Okay, so that's a very important word, the lack of guardrails. What we don't want is the government to decide, because they're grossly incompetent and political. What you want is free markets, because if my medical AI gives you good advice and your brother-in-law's medical AI is having them take treatments that, you know, are based on the pharmaceutical company's needs, eventually you're going to figure that out and you're going to go to the one that's doing the right thing. You got to have choice. You got to have freedom of speech and thought, and that's what this fight Elon Musk is fighting is. Okay, you're right. You can program it all to be, you know, bad, but if you have other choices, and it's funny, people don't even realize.
But how do you know though? And don't, by the way, don't get me wrong. I'm not expecting you to have the answers to this, because I think at this point in time they're unanswerable.
Yeah.
But it's like, just like, if you have a condition that develops and you got to go see a doctor, and, you know, how do you know whether that doctor's a good doctor or a lousy doctor?
Well,
how do you know he's got the right,
and I'm living that right now.
Okay.
I'm living that right now.
You're dealing with
and my answer is usually they're wrong.
Yeah.
Almost always they're wrong.
So you
and so
don't
I'm
know
doing
what
my own
doctor you're going
research
to
figure that out. Okay. And what I need is tools that can help me do that. And so as I start to get more tools, most people don't even understand. Apple just came out with their new Mac Mini for $529. It's got this M4 chip in it. It runs AI on your desktop.
My
at your
phone
house.
is supposed to run AI.
Yeah.
I just got the Apple 16 Pro.
They just updated. That's right.
Yeah, and it's supposed to have Apple. And, you know, I've had it for a month and a half. I just have no freaking idea
how to use it.
AI.
Exactly right.
If it does, I don't know how to use its AI. I mean, I still use it for the same thing I did
That's
before.
right. It's
the
still
only
a phone.
reason I upgraded is because the other one started to glitch out
It's
too
still
much.
a phone.
Well, yeah, it's
Yes.
still a phone, and it's still a calendar and a browser.
Camera, right,
And a camera. That's pretty much all I use it for. I don't even know what its AI capabilities are.
And so it's gonna take time, just like computers. You know, I was an early adapter with computers. Many people, didn't adapt for 20 years. And their first computer was their phone. Okay, they never got a computer, but it is a computer. They think it's a phone. So AI is going to have that same kind of trajectory, though I think it's going to move much quicker, particularly in business. It's real clear. You're literally not going to be able to compete in business if you're not using AI. You just literally can't, because of the analysis that it gives you to know what's going on in your company, to understand, you know, the dynamics of the environment you're in. That's been a problem for decades. So, is it good, bad, or ugly? Only time will tell.
Well, but time for now has already told, to me anyway. I mean, you know the adage of how do you know that? You know, if somebody says something almost off the wall, well, I saw it online. Well, if I saw it online, that means I can trust it.
No.
That's the way people, you know, a lot of people since the advent and the growth and the evolution of the internet have been, I must be true. I saw it online. Well, bullcrap. Oh, I got it from AI.
Well, you know what I like to say?
And you know what I
like to say? You'll love this. You'll use this analogy. I want an AI based on the Encyclopedia Britannica. Why? Because Encyclopedia Britannica had editors. There wasn't a word that went into Encyclopedia Britannica that didn't have references as resources.
But you know what I'm going to say, right?
What?
Who are the editors? What is, you know what I mean? We used to be able to trust journalism too, because it was the editors.
Okay.
Well, you know what? When their bias shows through in a newspaper, it can show through in the pages of Encyclopedia Britannica and ultimately on this online thing. Yeah. It's like, for example, just any of them, pick, you know, the ChatGPT, I don't know, there's how many different AI sites there are now. But, you know, you get a college kid saying, tell me all about, why I should vote for Kamala Harris, and it will give you a whole bunch of reasons.
Right.
Why should I vote for Donald Trump? And it'll give you, you really can't. He's a bad guy. And I'm obviously
Right. No, you're
but,
right.
But that's real.
Those are examples.
Explain why it was, why it was a right to drop the A-bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and why it was wrong. And you're getting very opinionated answers to these things.
Yeah.
Again, Geico lives.
Right.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Sure.
It was true of computers, and it'll be true of AI.
Sure. And so I've actually had AIs like ChatGPT where they've given me an answer, and I've written back and said, that's wrong. Look this up. What you just told me is wrong. And it's come back and said, we're sorry. We looked at your reference and you're right. Okay.
Now that's
All right?
impressive.
Okay.
I've never seen
I've done that because I'm not going to just blindly believe anything. Okay. But Bob, you can't go through life not trusting anyone.
I know.
You can't. There's the boogeyman's not under your bed. Okay. They're real.
He might be. I don't know if I would agree with it. He might be. But you're right. We have to, at some point, we have to go into bed comfortably and rest and know somebody's not coming out to get me. But he may very well be, and you just have to ignore it.
And you have to believe that, that there is good in this world, and there are people that are willing to fight for that, and that, if you support them, then, good will do more than evil. But that doesn't mean that AI couldn't, that China or North Korea, couldn't create an AI that literally takes over your power grid and things like that. That's very possible.
That is very
that's
concerning.
That's why you believe in God or you don't. That's why you have a faith, that God has a plan for us and that we are, living his plan, and we don't control our fate, but we have to act every day for the good. And that's what I do. I get up every morning, I say, thank you, God, for this day. I promise I will do everything in my power to do good for myself, my family, my community, and everyone I meet.
That's a good pledge.
And
that's a good pledge.
Yeah. Every day.
And I like that.
I work that hard.
The one thing, God has a plan for us, but his number one plan for us was to let us make our own plans. That's what free will is.
That's right.
And that's a very dangerous thing, because some people making their own plans and doing things their own way do it without the pledge of, I want to do good for people around me. And
I want to do evil. I want to help myself.
Exactly.
I want to do right. People.
Yeah.
Right?
Because they don't necessarily believe in God or the, what comes.
Well, so that's why the Joe Biden pardon thing is so hurtful for most people, because it's so unjust. But if you believe in God, you believe that he will face, God someday, and it'll be a lot worse than what the courts would do to him.
Yeah, very well.
So you got to kind of put it in that bucket.
I do.
Otherwise, it makes no sense.
And we do. We say all the time in our family too that things happen for a reason. Sometimes only God knows that reason.
That's right.
And that is true. That is truly the nature of faith. Tom Zawistowski, sell your website, sell your podcast.
Sure. Well, our website is wethepeopleconvention.org, and I think our website is pretty good.
Your website is amazingly informative.
We post some good stories and things. You'll see a lot of videos there. Our whole idea is to inform you about things that affect your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, because that's really the goal. I want to be free. I want to take care of my family. I want to be prosperous. So what is going on in the world that affects that? So we try to get rid of all the propaganda. We don't do stuff about Jesse Smollett getting out. Doesn't matter. That doesn't affect you. But it does affect you that the Russian ruble collapsed, and that could cause Putin to do some things that could affect you. Okay, so if you go to our website, that's kind of the idea behind it, is that the stories we pick are not all the stories, and some of them are really on the fringe, like, wow, nobody else covered that, but it's because it affects you in a way. And so go to wethepeopleconvention.org to see that. Our podcast is a weekly news summary show. And so what we try to do is look at all the stories that come out all week, pick the ones that are most important, and then present them in a way that helps you connect them, because so many stories are connected to each other. It's kind of cause and effect. Why is Joe Biden giving long-range missiles to Ukraine before Trump comes in? Well, we try to explain those things and help you understand. But mostly, Bob, our logo says not just talk, but action. And in every one of our podcasts, I'll say, I need you to do this. We're trying to get a bill passed in Ohio that keeps children from being able to access social media and have a smartphone. And so I've got a whole thing on our website. Dr. Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, did this video that explains how social media is literally killing our children and destroying our future. And here's how you can pass legislation in your state to do that. And we ask our members to go to their state legislators, and get that done. That's a big ask, but we give you all the steps to do it, because we have to do that if we want our kids to have the life we had, they got to be able to talk like you and I. You take a lot of kids today, they couldn't have this conversation. They'd be texting each other, right?
No doubt.
Okay? So we're trying to fix some of those things. So not just talk, but action. And you'll see that on our website.
I mostly do just talk. So my action is by partnering with and working with and talking to guys who do the action.
All right.
That's my action.
I love it.
Tom Z, I really appreciate you. Thanks very much. Make sure you go to Tom's website. Make sure you check out his pod every Saturday, right?
Yeah, every Saturday goes about noon.
The WeThePeopleConvention.org website, and watch and take action. Tom Z is a tremendous patriot, and if you found value in this, share this. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a sign up for whatever you can do to make sure that you check out all of the content we bring on Strictly Speaking, especially great episodes like this one. Thank you to Tom Z, and thanks to you for watching. We'll see you next time.